quite a straightforward thing, really. What happens if people stay disengaged, if the ripple effect doesn't work, and then what do you do then? And should we actually care? What should we be doing? Interestingly, sort of picking up on this sort of, we're in uncertain times, and people, we've got low wage inflation, we've got sort of a pretty economically poor outlook, and I thought it was quite interesting because Professor David Blake of Cass Business School has done some research, and there was like only 30% of people were interested in saving for as a priority, and that's and that was in the I think 35 to 55 age group. So pretty much almost by the time you've got to know it's pretty much too late. Yes. You heard last week, it's only something like 17 million people. That's everybody that voted for Leave. Have less than 100. I get the fractious about that. Have less than £100 in savings. That's not pension. That's the thing, and this is the backdrop I think that we need to know that we're working against. Things aren't going to get better. The economy is not going to suddenly be wonderful. People aren't going to start being paid more. So what do we do? What is our job in this? Basically, it's support people in their journey towards retirement, regardless of whether they're engaged or not. You're going to get people that connect, and you are going to get people who doesn't matter what you do, they are not going to connect, and we need to be there for them. We talked about Airbnb and sexy pensions and stuff, but there's still a lot of people who don't trust pensions. So if you don't trust it, you haven't got the money to do anything with it, you're not going to do it. We need to get them to join. If we can be trustworthy, if we can be consistent, then they'll join. They won't opt, they will not opt out. And so, our job essentially is to create products that aren't dependent on that engagement, to have engagement as a piece for those people that want to, but we can't alienate probably the 80% of people that aren't going to. And it's only in doing that we can think about better outcomes. Obviously, the thing that we have to do over and above everything else is get people to join pension schemes, to not opt out. Because once you're in, you at least have a chance. If we've not got them in, then you might as well. You can't engage with them in that sense. So, whilst that research might say that they value it, like you said, 67% of people, what happened to the other 33%? So they have no connection to pensions at all. So we need to create default funds that are fit for purpose, that can work across different economic environments. Like you said, with the Target Date Fund, it's been pretty volatile, and it seems to have withstood that. Basically, as long as people join, over and above everything else, that's investment performance and charges, it's how much they put in. And basically, Professor Blake again, he did some work with this does. And they said it's the primary driver. We need to get people to contribute more over time. We'll talk about that in a moment. But you've also got this. Okay, fine. We've got auto-enrolment, so basically we're a little bit down the line. Our disengaged joiners, they're tending to be the ones that they haven't opted out, but they're still pretty much not connected, and they're not really paying very much anyway. You could, if they're not engaged, if they're not educated, if they don't know how they're not aware of their financial well-being in the this. You could sort of say, well, they would say if the statutory limit or the statutory amount that I'm putting into of this being put in on my behalf, then that's enough.
It almost feels like a recommendation, doesn't
Yes, it does. I mean, I remember my boss, it was sort of like the sort of about 95, 96, when we were talking about DC, it was 14-15% of your income over your working life. That's excludes all career breaks and things like that. And then you're round about going to get your 2/3. So any career breaks, or anything less than that, or starting later, only becoming engaged by the time you're 40 or something, all of those things are going to stop people having the option to do something when they retire. There were some investments by Russell on there. They call it the retirement rule, and it's about where the sort of attribution of where your income comes from in retirement, and it showed that typically you've got sort of 10%. I've got to read it because I keep on forgetting it and putting it in the wrong place. But the amount saved, 10% of the stream of income in retirement comes from what you've paid in. Then pre-retirement income growth is 30%, and then post-retirement income growth is 60%. So that still comes back down to, if you're not paying a lot of money in, you're not going to get sufficient to be able to do that. So we're talking about the to and through retirement here. And probably these people, they're going to be the serial defaulters. They're the ones that they can't be asked to opt out. They don't, they go for the default fund. They go for the standard, whatever retirement option is going to be. So we have to make sure that whatever we build, it's going to work in those environments. There's lots and lots of work being done on defaults. I was saying, I went to a thing last week, a DC thing, where they were talking about creating sort of DC funds with really quite some sophisticated stuff for the self-selectors. And what I asked then, and I still haven't been given the answer to, is what makes that worthwhile? If 80-90% of your people are going to be going into the default, then why are we paying all of that money to be able to research what unless there's so much cash going into there that the self-selectors are going to be fine. And would they be fine without that? Would they do that? So, the thing was with the default, obviously, historically always had one path, whereas now I still have a trouble with the default that's got one path, because the default indicates one, but then I'm known to be anal, so I can move on from that. But ultimately, in its sort of original sense, the default was supposed to be, it was supposed to be there, but it actually turned out to be not right for pretty much everyone. So at least, you have to take, it is an optimization sort of thing. It's, you're never going to be thinking about what's perfection. All you can do is you can make it as best as you can. But what employers can do is they can analyse their workforce. In the particularly where we are now with employer stage, there's small and micro. They know who they've got. So it doesn't necessarily need all the big analytics that some of the larger employers need. But that, as Luke would probably say, the analytics are there. You can deal with that. Good default is going to target a good return, whatever you decide that might be. It's got to have, it's going to be diversified in some way. It's going to have low volatility. All of those things that we all sit there and go, yes. It's obviously got to have low charges. Interestingly, we've had the charge cap since 2015, but before that, people were talking about value. And one of the consultants did some research on sort of commingled funds and things like that. And what they found was that the charges on the underlying funds, the sub-funds in effect, were loading by almost like 50%. That's a significant amount of money. So So I suppose our responsibility is to make sure that we do that. You know, we talk with our investment consultants, that we do all of that interrogation. Because you sure as hell that these serial defaulters, they don't care. You know, so all of those things that you need to do. But that level of due diligence is very difficult for smaller employers to do on their own, and that's, you know, master trust is essentially a good sort of route for them. But like I said, you know, if people think they're paying enough, are they going to start paying more? You know, you're going to have to, you've got to find that middle bit, and that's quite a difficult one. Interestingly, the PPI, they did some research, and what they did is it sort of comes before the behavioural stuff, where you say you know, you're trying to sort of nudge and all that kind of thing. And what they do is they reduce, or they seek to influence our behaviour, which is a product of our experience, our society, our health, all of those kind of things. And they do that by particular levers. And it's rather than saying what you do, you need to do this thing because it's good for you, what they do is they make it harder to do the bad thing. And if you take smoking, you can't see it in shops because they go behind it. I see people creep up, they get a lottery ticket and they say, oh, that 20 knows. and then they get this black packet, because they have no idea what what branding is completely gone. And they've said that is reducing people smoking. So what you do is if you take out the bad, then what you're left with is good. So sometimes you just make it easier to do. Some people know I have horses, and you can't tell them to do the good thing. What you do is you make it easy for them to do the good thing, and you make it very difficult to do the bad thing. It doesn't always work, but same as humans. These levers for pensions, it's basically called choice architecture. So compulsion, pretty much sort of also around it, nearly there. Defaults, leave it to the experts. Don't let them don't make them make decisions. Safety nets, regulation, protections sort of in that. The safety net is sort of like the welfare says, means testing, things like that. People that can never actually save if they were, even if they wanted to. Protections is the regulation. Behavioural intervention, that's using things like nudge, that's actually getting them to sort of move their behaviours, and freedom. In terms of pension, that's freedom of choice, that's letting them know that it's not all locked away. Old ideas. Nearly 20 years ago, Smart came about. Save All Tomorrow. It makes me feel very, very old. But, it's all based on whether or not you forego some of your wage increases to go into your pension, but if you're not getting wage increases, or if they're being absorbed immediately by rising costs of living, how does that work? You've got John Critland. He was talking when he did the review of the sort of state system and stuff like that. He said that what we need is some kind of, what he calls it, a midlife MOT. Because one of the things he says is absolutely ridiculous that an IFA is only of use to us if we know what questions we need to ask. And what the MOT does is it interrogates, it says, like, are you going to peg it sometime soon? So it asks about health, it asks about expectations, how much money you've got, all of those things, to be able to come out so that you have some questions, so that you can engage, and at a time when you have got questions. And you're probably thinking, oh my God, am I going to have to work for the next 30 years? With Smart, or with communication, can we link them to life events? those sort of things. Can we, if people are getting married, having babies, all of those sort of things, can we start to trigger in what's there? And obviously nudge, where you're just using those sort of behavioural levers, which are just to move them into sort of good things. Alternative routes. I mean, Luke's going to talk to you about technology, and I'm not a technology expert, but the thing is, what we can do is we can use even quite simple technology to be able to understand who we've got, what our membership's doing. There are some pretty funky tools out there that will, in a broader membership, they can, what you can do is you can target memberships. You can say, right, I want to know all of my 18 to 35-year-olds, where they're invested, why they, and you can send them an email to say, John, why have you got half your money in cash? Or, why have you got half of it in bonds? Or, all of those sort of things. And it has, research after research proves that if we say, Jessica, what would you like? What would you like to do? You sort of think, oh, you've picked it. You know me. You've got some interest. And saying dear member or dear Ms, it just doesn't work. So if we can do some of that layered communication, and the only way that we can do it really is through technology. And then, should we really bother to engage them at all? Once we've got them, talking about financial well-being, I mean, there is, I think this is where data might go on. Forget about pensions on its own. I think we live in a vacuum. We need to understand that as an industry, the people that are a part of our world, they don't really think very much of it, but they do understand. They understand whether they've got money in their pocket. And there's a lot of stuff that can come around, which is around the financial well-being, where employers are starting to pick up that if they can understand how their employees are coping, that they can improve productivity. And there was a study, it was only 2,000 British workers, but 16% of them, just 16% felt that they were financially savvy or secure. And 60% were only able to manage their finances on a short-term basis, which really fits in with the larger study that you were looking at. And the trouble is that people keep their financial worries to themselves when they're at work, but it does affect productivity, and it does lead to behaviours that sometimes fraud, things like that, those come about. So what we could do is we could piggyback on some of those things that are broader, and you see sort of quite a lot of that. So that's my view, which is not, oh right, okay, we should pack up and go home, but I think that we need to just make it easier for people to do the right thing and be there for them if we need to engage with them, but don't rely on that as the thing that we do.
It's about being sort of realistic about the fact that there are going to be plenty of people that are disengaged, regardless of whether or not you're sat personally in front of them and explaining it to them. But it's about ensuring that we're ready with a bit of information, yes, and a bit of creative thinking, and using, like you said, those levers like employers as well to engage people and to get that message across.
Absolutely, but just don't get so we get so uptight with ourselves. We think we're so terribly important as a thing, but we are a very small part of people's lives, and we need to find that middle. I'd like to find that middle.